Could you imagine you and I just looking at each other in silence for 30 minutes?
That sounds amazing. Lee Rough. Welcome to the Far More Podcast. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Jason.
Welcome to the Snow Day edition.
It's like it is Snowmageddon, as they call it.
You know what? We started this year with like 3 special editions. We had a New Year's edition.
Yeah.
We had a surprise birthday edition.
Yep.
And now we have the Snow Day edition.
It's so much fun. Ish.
Your face says I'm not thrilled with the Snow Day.
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
Well, number one, I don't know how Northerners, people who get this much snow on a regular basis, well, let's be honest, they get a whole lot more than we have. I don't know how they function. They go out into it. Like they go to work, kids go to school. My kids want to go play, and I'm like, okay, maybe for 5 minutes.
Girl, because our kids got like gym shorts and like backwards hats like me today.
We're definitely ill prepared. That is
Correct.
for sure.
They're not prepared. So they get about 5 minutes out there, and then their face is burning, their hands are burning, their feet are burning. It's like time to go in.
But do you know what it is a beautiful picture of? It is a beautiful picture of Jesus' blood washing us white as snow. That's what it makes me think of when it's still pure. There haven't been any cars out on the streets yet, and it's just a pure blanket of snow. It does remind me of just how God's word says that his blood washes us white as snow. Isn't there a hymn? We should sing the hymn.
Yeah, but then we go outside with our brokenness and chaos, and we just destroy it with all of our things.
Wow.
Like, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Well, and it sounds about right that that's where you would take it.
Yes, fair.
Instead of just appreciating the beauty of it, you're like, and then we go and mess it all up.
Then we try to throw it at each other's face.
Okay, so hello, welcome to our listeners. This is a fun one. I mean, look at Jason; he's got the backwards hat on today. He's going rogue.
Hey, I'm wild and crazy on this snow day. Right
You
now.
are wild and crazy on this snow day, but today, which I think it's kind of appropriate to talk about what we're talking about today with the weather being what it is and we're sort of trapped in the house. We're going to talk about getting in the quiet with God. And we touched on this a little bit in a previous episode. I alluded to this this when we were supposed
to teaser.
It was a little teaser. And I talked about how our youth pastor at our church did a message on this, and it was so good, so convicting, so eye-opening, because my immediate thought, because he asked all of us, how many of you can say that you spend 30 minutes a day alone with God? And I immediately shot my hand up, and then he said, but hang on. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to put my hand back down. He said, not like in the car, not listening to a podcast, not reading your Bible, not doing a Bible study.
Listening to worship music.
Not listening to worship music. How many of you spend 30 minutes, up to 30 minutes, sitting alone in the quiet, just listening? And my hand quickly came back down. I mean, I really think there were less than 5 hands.
Well, we have a word for that on this podcast. We call that oof.
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 Right. Because all those other things are good. But what Andrew is his name, the youth pastor's name who preached, what he challenged us with was getting alone, not taking your Bible. He said, I know that sounds weird, but don't take your Bible with you, because how else are you supposed to hear the voice of God if you are crowding it out with noise? And I use that term loosely, listening.
No. Don't use it loosely.
Well, no, what I was going to say is listening to sermons, listening to worship music, doing Bible studies isn't bad. It's not noise, but in this case, it is.
Well, girl, I think you jumped like 4 or 5 steps ahead here.
Okay, then bring me.
We don't even want to be alone with our own thoughts. Forget being alone with God. for a second.
Well, that's true.
If we're really honest, like the things that scare us the most is a blank sheet of paper, a blank whiteboard at work, a blank calendar, a blank schedule, a blank TV screen.
Why does that scare us the most?
Because we're just trained we need these distractions. Because if we're there just sitting with ourself and our thoughts.
Could you imagine you and I just looking at each other in silence for 30 minutes?
That sounds amazing. Rough.
Right?
Correct.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable.
I'm not even to sitting alone with God yet. I'm at the point that I've realized I have avoided sitting alone with myself.
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
I feel like you need to say more on that.
Nope. I'll just hang that one right there. I'll just drop it right there.
But, he did mention in his sermon too that sometimes it takes 10, 15, 20 minutes to almost get our own thoughts out of our head. I think that's what happens to me is when I do try to take these intentional moments, the next thing I know, I'm architecting 4 or 5 new businesses in my head. I'm off on my own world. Satan's distracted me with all the things. And I'm time out. What am I doing?
Yeah.
I do the what am I doing thing.
Don't they say, isn't there a word for trying to, a brain dump? Have you heard of that phrase? A brain dump?
You're just trying to dump all the thoughts in your head? What do you mean?
When you're trying to sit alone and you're trying to concentrate on one thing. And so in this instance, it would be concentrating on hearing the voice of God. But you have all these things, like Andrew talked about, 15 to 20 minutes just to sort through and let all the brain craziness take place. It's called a brain dump.
Yeah, I think I would need 10 to 15 months to do that.
That's a lot.
Right. Well, think about where we were the other day.
You have a very overactive brain.
We're processing. We're trying to enter into this season of fasting.
Oh.
And I was trying to get to a place of, okay, what the intent behind this fast for me?
Yeah.
What am I really trying to connect with God on? What am I really putting on the table? And so to even get there in my own brain, I started putting sticky notes all on this wall. Next thing I know, I look up, I got 20 sticky notes on a wall of big things in my life that are in my head right now that are going on.
And I feel like you literally peeked your head into the living room. Or where was I? The dining room. And you were like, hey, girl, I need your help. And I'm like, okay, let me help you. I don't know how, but let me help you. But I ended up helping a little.
No, you helped a lot.
Oh, okay. Say more.
Well, but I think that's the reality is that once I put all this on the wall, these weren't small things.
No.
These were gigantic rocks of things going on in my life and in my head. So, you came in and on the wall, these were 10, 15, 20 things that were just not small things.
They weren't inconsequential.
These were giant areas of my life. They're taking a lot of brain space and time space in my life. And I'm like, what am I doing with this? I'm like, what am I putting in front of God in this fasting moment? The answer was everything, but it felt like I was all over the map. And so even just in that area, I was like, I can't clear things out of my head enough to get focused on just time with God.
Well, so what are you going to do?
Well, but what it took in that moment, you and I sitting down and almost talking through all the things, and it was so Jason-y. I was having to do
Jason-y.
Well, we were doing a postcard or post-it note sorting exercise on the wall. Before a fast. It's just so
can we be real clear?
Come on, girl.
We weren't. If you'll notice, I still haven't written anything on a Post-it note because that's not my process. That's
right.
You have to have a process for everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not saying that me not having necessarily a Post-it note process is right, but I think the rightness is either somewhere in the middle, or it's just that we do things differently.
We definitely do things differently. I think that is facts. Facts.
Yeah.
But it just helps me sort through it. But getting to a place to be alone in silence with God, it takes a lot of time for me to get all of that mental energy out to even get to a place to be able to listen to his voice.
So I guess it's a lot of it is trying to pray through, Lord, clear the noise, right? Because only he can do it.
Correct. And just like Jesus did, though, I also have to go to a desolate place. I have yet to figure out or do, or God has broken me of this. I can't wake up in the morning, go to a kitchen table, sit in silence, and it work for me. I literally have to move locations.
You have to remove yourself from your current place.
Yes. And so this new fancy word we've learned is called what?
Which is eremos.
Eremos. Define that for us.
It is a quiet, desolate place. And so what Andrew taught us was, and I mean, this was crazy to me, when in the Bible, when it talks about Jesus going into the wilderness, the original text, that's translated eremos. So it's not an actual, what we think of as like a desert. It's a quiet, desolate place. And he kept that very sacred because he knew he had to get that alone time with his Father before he went out and spoke to the demands of the day, which was constant. From what we read in Scripture, I feel like the moment he stepped out into the public, he left his eremos, which I told you earlier, it always makes me think of the word arena. He stepped out of the eremos into the arena, actually, is what he was doing. And I love that Andrew did a message on this, because he also said that he believes, and I agree with him, I'm in complete agreement with this, that it's a practice, it's a spiritual discipline that we do not place enough importance on.
No.
We have replaced it with, Bible study, podcasts, sermons, worship music. And again, all those are so...
Or none of those.
Or none of those, yes.
Or commutes to work.
But
you know what I mean? Like, that's a
those
lot
are
of
all
men.
Necessary, but we have to get back to this.
Yeah, I know a lot of men that we talk about anytime quiet time with God. It's like, oh, on my way to work is my prayer and quiet time.
But it's
like,
not.
It's like we're coupling it with something.
Right.
Because we're not making this
You're
intentional
multitasking.
time. Correct. But I get it. I mean, I understand how much time it takes for my brain to turn off, slow down, focus. That, I've talked about this before on the podcast, is when I was at my best, and I didn't even know it in terms of true connection with God and alone time, is when I was doing those trail races, and I was on a training run, like a 4-hour training run, and I'd get about 2 hours in. So when I get exhausted, right, and so I've spent 2 hours running through all the mental thoughts, and so now I've ran out of all the thoughts. I'm gassed. Like, it was like, quote, there's nothing left but to focus on me and God and listen to God's voice.
You literally cleared the mechanism. That's in a movie.
It's a movie?
It's in a movie.
Okay. Yeah, so I did the brain dump, or whatever you said.
That's what it's called. It's called a brain dump. But it's interesting that it took you 2 hours.
That's right.
First and foremost, it took you not being here.
Correct.
At home. You were running.
Yes, physically draining myself.
For 2 hours.
Correct. In the woods alone. Before I could even get to a place.
To where you could be in the quiet.
Yeah. So I got some work to do, because I can't do
You can't do that every day.
I can't do a 4-hour run at 4 a.m.
every single day.
I mean, I could. Well, no, I can't. My body can't do that.
No, you can't. I think this is just going to be one of those things where it's a learning process, and you're going to have to practice it, right? Like, we have to practice our spiritual disciplines. They don't just come to us immediately. Just like as a brand new believer who opens the Bible for the first time, compared to that same believer who 3 years from then opens the Bible, those two moments in time and those two experiences are going to look wildly different. And so I think one of the important takeaways is to don't give up just because we'll even just say the first month, it's not quote unquote working.
Well, I don't see a scenario in which it doesn't work.
Okay.
To be honest, I think even figuring out how to get distractions out of your life. Let's just say you're not connecting with God. You don't hear God's voice.
Okay.
Just being able to have 30 minutes a day in silence to get all the junk and distractions out of our life is probably a healthy practice. So when I think about it, I think about, okay, what are daily practices that I want to make sure that I hold sacred? But what are these on these different moments of time? Just like a fast. You don't fast necessarily every day, right? You're doing a fast for a certain period for a certain thing. There's also probably moments in my life that I need to make sure I intentionally go, okay, I need to go away, right? I can't go off into the mountains, 8 hours away every single day. When do I need to build that into my life intentionally so that I do that for something that I'm praying through, working through, desperately wanting God to answer for me? Those things. So I think those are kind of two different aspects.
So let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're talking about all this, let's start just spitballing some questions out.
Oh boy.
Do you think that it is important to start the day with it every single day?
I think it is for me. Are you saying just is important to start the day versus end the day? What's your real question there?
Not necessarily versus in the day.
Okay.
Because even Andrew touched on that.
Yeah.
When do we enter into the Eremos? And I'm going to be honest, in my mind, he basically said all day, because he said first thing in the morning, throughout the day, and then basically it's the last thing, or he didn't say it was the last thing, but he did say at night. To me, I interpreted that as really all day. But what I'm asking is, regardless of throughout the day or at night, do you believe that for you personally, this is a you personally thing, do you think that you need to keep first thing in the morning as a sacred, I'm going to try my best to enter into the Eremos?
Yeah, I think morning routines, connecting first thing in the morning is critical for me, because after the morning time, life happens and you lose control of your day in a lot of aspects, unfortunately. Now, I also completely buy into what Andrew said of, yes, ground yourself first thing in the morning in terms of what is God calling you to do for that day? How am I on mission today? Or how am I making sure I'm paying attention to where is the enemy coming after me today, which is something that I've really been focusing on a lot more. Then life and world is going to happen throughout your day. And then when are you calling a timeout? Say, okay, hang on, because you're going to get sideways. You're going to get sideways real fast in your day. That's just the reality. And so how do you then reground yourself? And then how do you kind of close out your day from a place of, reviewing the game film, if you will, with God to prepare yourself for the next day?
Hey, God, let's sit down and review this.
Right. Like
these plays.
Romantically, I would love to have my life structured that way. And I use the word structure intentionally at that. Practically, that's really hard.
Yeah.
It gets real hard. And the enemy's going to throw so many distractions your way and make you feel dumb. And you're like, why am I doing this thing? Yeah. Why am I spending this intentional time? Why? Like, that's what he does to me. Is going to either distract me with a bunch of things or throw a bunch of why questions at me. Because I always have to know the why. I don't do anything without the why.
Oh my goodness. You ever, when I ask you to do something, or I'm like, hey, why don't we do this thing? And you're like, why? I roll my eyes at you because you sound like a 5-year-old child. Why?
No. That is not fair.
But
that's not fair.
I will be like, because I said so.
No, That's the worst answer in the world you can give me, because I try to operate with such intentionality that there has to be an intention behind it.
You do.
So if you're doing something there's no intention behind it, my brain's going to go, why?
Okay. So we're talking about why. Let's transition just a little bit. Okay. So, Andrew was talking about first thing in the morning. We're talking about making that time sacred. But do you know what? Well, this is going to be a duh question for you and pretty much anybody listening.
Okay.
What do we tend to go for first when we first wake up?
Our phone?
The phone. And I actually want to challenge you. I want to challenge our listeners. I want to challenge myself to not do that. Because as soon as you pick that box up, noise, you talk about a bunch of unnecessary noise. And it's a distraction. It completely diverts your attention away from diverts my attention. I'll make it personal. It diverts my attention away from where my attention should be going first thing in the morning. If we are saying that we need to keep this first thing in the morning time of our day sacred and set aside, that's so hard.
Well, yeah, it's so hard. I mean, I use my phone to tell me when to wake up.
Right.
So
do I.
I also use my phone to tell me when to go to bed.
Right, me too. We use our phone for everything.
Correct. So it's already got to set up for failure out the gate. Turn the alarm off. What do you got to do? Pick up your phone and turn your alarm off. It's already got you. The enemy already has you.
Okay,
Boom.
So are you saying I need to get on Amazon.com and buy an alarm clock?
I'm not telling you should buy anything. Let's be real clear.
Oh, come on. We love Amazon. But I mean, I'm saying like what's the practical way to not let it just completely derail our first thing, sacred time in the morning with God?
Understand what's most important to you and get real with that. Is what's most important to you. What did I miss in the social media space? What did I miss on my email?
Oh, we have FOMO.
What did I miss? What did you miss? What we're missing is time with God. And so I think it's just getting real about what's most important.
Well, but okay. You say getting real about what's most important. What if somebody says, well, if I'm being completely transparent and completely honest, figuring out what I missed while I was asleep is most important to me. Does that mean that you would say, okay, well then do that thing?
No, I would say that this conversation isn't for you.
Oh.
That's what I would say.
Okay. You're basically saying you're not ready for this, girl.
I would say this. We would sit down and have a very different conversation.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. On. Tell me more. Yeah.
Is it most important to you?
Is it most important?
Or do you want it to be most important to you?
Clarification. I get caught up in the lie of, well, God's always going to be there for me. These other things might not be here for me. God's always going to be there for me.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
And so you're like, okay, let me take care of these things, because if I don't nurture these things, they're going to go away. God's not.
Or everything's going to fall apart if I don't handle this right now.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, this is going to grow into a bigger issue. And this is the lie I tell myself, right? This isn't necessarily truth at all. It's a lie I tell myself, is this will turn into a bigger issue if I don't figure this thing out or address this thing now.
It will snowball.
It will snowball. Happy snow day.
Happy snow day.
Done.
You know, I want it to be truly deep down in my heart. I want it to be the most important thing to me. But well, no, I'm not going where I think you think I'm going with it.
No, I'm just saying you used the word but, so I'm just saying.
Well, no, hard stop. I do want it to be the most important thing to me. Where my sin nature comes in is I can get so caught up, and Andrew talked about this in his sermon as well. I can get so caught up in spending that time with God and get this like, oh, look, I'm being so holy and I'm being so righteous that one of our kids will walk in when I'm having my quiet time and I snap at them a little. I mean, I'm just going to be real. And when Andrew talked about that, I got super convicted. I'm like, oh, I've been there, you know? And that's, and he, you know, he talked about how we need to respond the way Jesus would respond. Like Jesus never snapped at anyone like that out of like frustration because they were approaching him or interrupting him. Yeah. And that was why I said, but I do want that time. I do want that sacred time. But I also need to ask the Lord to give me some patience and to be ready for an interruption. That an interruption isn't a bad thing. It's just my kids wanting me to be their mom. Yeah. On their schedule, you know? And so that was, I don't know if that spoke to you as much as it did to me, or if it convicted you as much as it did me, but I shocker.
No, my struggle is more of how do I not get caught up in a academic or intellectual connection with a study. I'm reading my Bible to understand more.
Okay.
Not reading my Bible to connect with God
to
more.
Deepen your relationship.
Correct.
Okay.
That's my struggle, is getting so caught up on, okay, I'm learning more.
Mm-hmm. You're educating yourself.
I'm educating myself more. Yes, my theology is getting stronger. Look at me.
But isn't that the beauty of the Bible isn't involved in this part?
Well, this part I'm not doing. That's what we're talking about, right? The alone time with God without a Bible, without anything, I'm not doing that.
Right. But that's why we're talking about it, because we need to do it.
Yeah, but you were talking about some of your alone time when the kid's interrupting.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
I was just playing off of that.
Sure.
And you said, is that a struggle? I was like, no. Not a struggle for the kids coming and interrupting me in my Bible study. I don't have the same.
You don't have the same struggle.
I don't have the same struggle. I will shut that door and lock it. So as I'm replaying Andrew's message back in my mind, there was one thing he talked about, and it was the difference between connecting with people and connecting with God, right?
Yeah.
That really spoke to me.
In what way?
Well, because most of my challenges, struggles, tensions in life come when you're just trying to connect and work with a group of people, because as people, we're just messy.
Well, and we're all so different.
We're all so different.
Yeah.
But one thing he reminded me of is, if we don't have this alone time with God right, how can we expect to have time with people right? And I was like, oof.
It makes sense though, right?
It makes sense. I'm like, why can't I figure out this people thing here? Well, I was like, well, bruh, you ain't figured out this alone time with God.
Bruh. Yeah.
Right? So it reminded me to reset, okay, that's another reason why I ground myself first thing in the morning there, so that when I'm encountering people situations.
It's your why.
That's why to do it in the morning.
You need the why.
I need a why.
And there it is.
And that's going to help me to prepare for my interactions with all of us messy people.
Well, yeah, I think...
Maybe bring less of my own mess.
Well, and the other thing that he said is it's not an either or. It's a
That's
both and. He said we need that. We need to enter into the Eremos with God, but we also need to connect with people. And I think...
Community.
I think it was... in that part of his sermon, I think that's... I could be wrong. Correct me if you know. I think that's where he did sort of transition into talking about his alone time with God, but then one of his kids would interrupt him. And I'm glad that you touched on that, because it's exactly what I was saying when I was like, that's what really convicted me. Because we look at interruptions as bad things, but we need to maybe we just need to reframe it. Blessings instead of interruptions, opportunities,
I mean, I hear your intent behind that. Some things are interruptions.
Well, yes.
And distractions. That's.
But we can control how we react to them.
Correct.
That's the thing. And you've even talked to me. We've talked about this off mic about you've gotten like life coachy. I'm going to call it life coachy with me. Yeah. You get life coachy with me. And you're like, Liz, you can't control what happens to you necessarily. I'm overgeneralizing, but for the sake of storytelling purposes. But you can control. You are in control with how you respond. You can either take a challenge and you can shrink away and hide under the covers, which is my natural tendency. I have been very honest and transparent about that on this podcast. But you said, or you can be like, okay, challenge accepted. Let me work to improve on this thing. And I truly do, in my heart of hearts, way deep down, want to be the latter. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be the weakling. I don't want to be the one that runs and hides from challenges. I don't want to be the one that runs and hides when given criticism, be it constructive or be it not delivered the best way. Either way, I do want to be somebody who rises above and is like, okay, let me take this on.
Yeah. Now you may not know this, but
you love me so much.
Well, I hope you know that.
I do.
And I hope you know that sometimes I don't always respond well.
What?
Right. So even though I apparently got life coachy in that moment, my response usually isn't, I don't fall into the shrink back. I fall into the...
Oh, no, you lean in and you lean in hard.
Yeah, right, but there's multiple ways to lean in, even when you do that, right? There's okay, you're coming after me. Come at 10X. Me, yo. I'm coming at you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got the hat. You turn the hat backwards.
A little sassy.
Yeah.
There's that aspect.
A little sassy.
That I have to be very careful that I don't do, because there's a lot of natural tendency there. It's like, okay, you come at me, I'm coming at you.
Let's go.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see how this goes.
Uh-huh.
Or...
They have a phrase for that, but it's not for this podcast. It's a family podcast, y'all.
Or there's a more Christ-centered way to approach that. And usually I need to ground myself and pray through that to find exactly what that is, because my natural tendency is going to be, you come at me, I'm going to come back at you tenfold.
But people.
I'm working through that. No, but Jesus.
Community. Well, no, I was going to say, but community. I was bringing us back full circle.
Okay.
We do need community. I mean, just as much as we need the other. I don't think so, but again, it's not an either or, because Jesus, he went off to the desolate place to spend time with the Father.
Can I say it differently? We need Jesus, and we need that connection with God. We're called to community.
Yes.
Right? As a response. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I definitely think that the Eremos part of it needs to happen first.
Oh, you got to ground yourself.
Because if you don't, what happens?
I mean, if I leave it up to myself, it's not pretty.
Y'all can't see me if you're watching, but my eyes got real big, y'all.
It's left up to me.
Well, no, it's like we laugh. It's not just you. It's all of us. We need to be grounded in the Lord before we hit the ground running, because life is in Satan. It's life and Satan. They're both going to throw all kinds of junk at us, and how we respond to it, I think, does have a lot to do with how we start our day. And
discernment, because it's a lot of times, you said life or Satan. We blend those. Satan equals life. Satan equals other people. Other people equals attacking me. Like, we don't necessarily understand true spiritual attacks, and then we prescribe them on a person.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's interesting, as you said that. I'm like, well, we got to tease those things apart, even asking God to create clarity for us. Like, this is not this person that's attacking me. This is not this person that's doing this thing.
Right.
It's the evil that exists in this world.
And it's there.
Oh, yeah.
So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask a question. We're going to end with this question.
Okay.
Unless you have something else. Why do you think spending that super quiet time with nothing around, why is it so difficult? And first, let me tell a quick little story that I told on a previous episode. You and I were at the kitchen table and we were talking. Do you remember what we were talking about? I mean, we were having a serious, we weren't just chatting. We were having a serious conversation. And
that's all I know, girl.
Ain't that the truth? Lord, y'all, somebody send me somebody who can chat about things. I need a chatter in my life because it ain't Jason Brock. But our daughters were sitting on the couch. They were overhearing our conversation, and there was a pause in our conversation. It was no more than 30 seconds. Are y'all okay? Was what one of our daughters said, and you and I just smiled at each other, but we didn't respond. Yeah. And she literally turned around, "Are y'all okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, girl, we're just being quiet." And it's like, why is it so difficult? I mean, I get that there's a phrase, silence can be deafening, but why is it so hard for us to just be still and get quiet? What do you think it is?
I believe it's the enemy's number one tool to keep us distracted from Jesus.
Quietness?
No, distraction.
Oh, distraction.
Constant
and noise.
Noise and distraction. Okay. If I can't get you to do the quote bad thing, I'm going to distract you so you don't do the good thing. And I'm just going
to divert your attention as much as I possibly can.
I'm going to water down your mission. I'm going to water down your effectiveness for the gospel by distracting you so much. Sometimes I'm distracting you with things that I'm even going to convince you the things I'm distracting you with are good things. Right? And you're like, these are good things. This is family. This is work.
It's healthy. These are healthy things.
This is going to the gym. You're doing all these good things in your life. And I'm going to get you piled up with so many good things that you completely miss the point. That's what I think. I think it's the enemy's biggest tool right now, especially here in America.
I don't know. I mean, I do not disagree with you. Part of me is like, are we afraid? Is there fear of being alone with our own thoughts? Because we know that the Lord might reveal something about us.
Isn't that the point?
That makes us really uncomfortable.
Isn't that still the point?
Of what? Of getting alone with God?
Shouldn't he reveal something to us that makes us so uncomfortable? I think literally that's the point.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that's why it's so difficult to do it, because we are afraid of it's fear. We're fearful of what's going to be revealed to us. Because I think we have talked about in a previous episode about when the Lord reveals something, you kind of got to do something about it, right? And
it requires a response.
So we avoid it so that we can avoid having to grow, improve, progress, hear from the Lord what he wants us to either add to or take away. I mean, do you see where I'm going with that?
I see what you're saying.
I think both can be true. Like, Satan is convincing us that all these other things are good, but we're also afraid to sit in the quiet because we're fearful of what we're going to hear. We're not ready. We're not, quote unquote, ready to hear.
Yeah. Well, that requires us to actually sit with God and understand, where are we really? What do we really believe? I think it comes into a what do we really believe question.
What do we really believe about what?
What it means to follow Jesus.
Okay.
What does it mean to live for the Lord? What does it mean to go all in? I think those are the really hard questions that you got to ask yourself.
Yeah. And are we doing that?
That's right. Or we're letting the enemy just stack up a bunch of like good enough things to keep us from asking that really hard question.
Because we, like you said, we have fooled ourselves into believing that we're doing good.
In some cases.
Ish.
Some cases.
Sort of.
Yeah, some cases.
Okay.
Mhm.
Y'all, that's a lot.
For a snow day.
That's a lot for a snow
It's
day.
supposed to be sledding and building snowmen right now.
It's definitely a lot for a guy with a backwards hat on. You're very cash today. I'm just not used to it.
Snow day, Jason.
Well, you know what?
What's that?
I'm so glad you're here.
Glad you're here too.
I'm so glad you're here, listener, those who are watching. We are on all the socials. Do you know which socials we're on? Can you name them?
Apparently all of them.
Come on.
Apparently all of them.
Come on. Rattle them
Facebook,
off.
Insta, TikTok, YouTube.
That's right. At Far More Podcast.
You're on Threads? Are you on Threads?
I mean,
You've kind of slacked on Threads.
girl, we have an account, but it's neither here nor there. Don't throw me under the bus. I love you. You can also send me an email. Look, hey, if you have snow today, please send me a picture of it. I love seeing everybody's pictures on Facebook and Instagram of all the snow because it really is beautiful. So send me a picture, farmorepodcast@gmail.com, and just take some time this week to enter into the Eremos. Like, get alone with God. You know, I think starting, you don't have to start with 30 minutes. I don't know about you, but that seems very overwhelming to me. I'm going to start with 15 minutes. I'm going to try and do it every single morning and just see what the Lord has for you. You know, it can't be bad, right?
Well, no.
No.
No, but someone like me, it's going to take 30 minutes for all the distractions to, quote, melt away.
Oh, I see what you did there. He's good, y'all. We can't wait to see you next time. Catch us on all the socials. And if you have snow, go play in the snow.
Awesome. See ya.